This is the Decibel Geek Podcast.
All right, welcome back to the Decibel Geek Podcast. This is part 2 of the Vinnie Vincent Special. Some things have definitely come up recently since I finished doing part 1, and we'll expand on that. I guess I'll do a little bit now. Things have changed a bit with Vinnie, of course. For those that haven't, well, a couple things. First, I got my 15 seconds of fame, I guess. Good friend of mine, Adam Gold from the Nashville Scene. It's a local publication that I think Village Voice Media puts them out. Wanted to do an article on Vinnie Vincent and the recent incident with the arrest and everything, and but wanted a bit of a backstory on the history. So I talked with him for a little while, and I'm quoted in an article that just came out with the Nashville Scene for this week. It's also available on the NashvilleScene.com website, and I think it's titled something like resident Rutherford County Kiss guitarist squandered his talent, which does, in my opinion, just my opinion, sums it up pretty well. The article is very extensive and that provides a lot of good information about what Vinnie's been up to over the years and does touch on the recent arrests and stuff. A couple things, for those that may not know, Vinnie has basically come public for the most part. He opened up his Double V tribute fan forum message board. He announced this through his YouTube page, the same YouTube page that he's used to dole out threats on people like me, and also told people that media like me and Adam, my friend from the Nashville Scene, have gotten wrong about, the story with his incident and stuff, and spreading lies and stuff like that, and then in the same breath basically makes a comment that his charges have been dropped and his case has been dismissed for the domestic issue. And I'm not going to go into a whole dissertation on about the legal process and the domestic issue and all that, because I don't really know anything about it, and I'll be the first person to say so. But essentially, and Adam's article touches on this much better than I can, but essentially that's not true. The case has been retired, which is a technical term for it's being put on the shelf to see how Vinnie behaves in the future. And he has been ordered to do 8 weeks or 8 hours of anger management until the next trial date, which is sometime in December. And that's not exactly an admission of innocence, having to go take courses, anger management and stuff like that. I mean, that does not mean the case has been dropped. He's on like an 1129 probationary thing, from what little I know of the legal process. But I'm not an expert on it, but Adam does a good job at summing it up. And so anyway, he came back on his message board and initially told everyone that the board would be open to everybody. And as you heard in my interview in part 1 actually you'll hear in the interview in the part 2, I'm getting my interviews confused here. You're going to hear a lot about there's a whole drama with Vinnie's message board, and a message board that opened up after he locked a lot of his fans out last year, the same board I'm talking about. He locked pretty much everybody out and has been non-responsive for the past year. But now he opened up a board and mentioned that it's welcome to everyone except a former moderator of his board, who we will also mention in the interview with the webmaster of VVForums.com. It's the Vinnie Vincent Fan Forum. I talked to Vic Radacic, who is in Australia, and he's the webmaster for the Vinnie Vincent Fan Forum, and that's the board that started up after Vinnie locked everyone out last year. And he's mentioning a toxic individual who was the webmaster of the Double V Forum, and we'll just call him Double V because I don't want to mention his name on here because he's decided to stay out of the spotlight, and he's probably smarter than me by doing that. So there's a long conversation about that, but Vinnie opened the board back up, said that everyone except for this Double V person, would be allowed to come back on, and it's a place for love and everything. And so a lot of us got excited that we were going to have a chance to go on and talk to him personally and maybe get some of the questions answered and get him to dispel or squash some of the rumors that have come over the years, some of the rumors that you've heard in these two parts of this episode, this special. But that doesn't seem to be the case. He basically, anyone he found out that was a part of the Vinnie Vincent Fan Forum, he pretty much immediately booted, and he's been very dictator-like in how he's treating the people there. Basically, if you don't kiss his ass, then if you question anything, for the most part, that he could possibly take the wrong way or have to state any kind of hard truth or anything, he boots them out, and so that's pretty much where that stands. So anyone hoping that this recent incident with the law may have humbled him or made him soften up a bit or want to address some of the rumors about him, it doesn't appear that that's the case. It seems like the same old Vinnie that we got last year. So this will make more sense if you don't know the message board drama when you hear the interview with Vic Radacic from the Vinnie Vincent Fan Forum. And actually, I think we'll go ahead and we'll start off with that.
No, I don't want to hear that Nickelback song again. My asshole hurts. Got so bad I gotta go to the hospital. Really? This is a Decibel Geek podcast.
Here with Vic Radacic in Australia, and Vic is half a world away, but this also shows how wide-ranging Vinnie's fans are. And well, let's just go ahead and get out into it. We're all fans, and that's how we got into this story. So, how did you become a Vinnie Vincent fan?
Of course, I was a big Kiss fan. They were huge here in 1980, massive, bigger than anything else before or since. But then my interest waned as Kiss interest waned in Australia. I was a young kid, so I was just going with the flow. And when I got back into Kiss, I started discovering their back catalogue that I'd missed out on. And Vinnie popped up on the Lick It Up album, and I really, really, really liked that album. And then there was Animalize and Asylum, and everything went through. And then when he released his Invasion stuff, I just loved it. I heard all the things that Gene and Paul were saying at the time about Vinnie not being so good or this and that and type of thing, but I was like, who cares what you guys say? This is excellent material. And just went from there.
Well, yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, as over the top as some of the soloing could be, you can't really deny that there's a lot of good songwriting there at the heart of it all. Well, and basically how I've met you is through the message board that you now run, which is the Vinnie Vincent Fan Forum, which is www.vvforums.com. And basically, we're refugees from the old Vinnie Vincent board. Can you share with us a little bit about what happened with the old Vinnie Vincent board and how it got transferred over to the board that you now run?
Very good story. Well, for as long as I can remember, there has been a Vinnie Vincent board, which I've been a member of, going back to the Pyro days in the 90s. And things were quiet, Vinnie people discussed things, talked a few things, and every now and then there might be a rumor about something Vinnie might be doing. So it just went on for a few years, and then Pyro's board got cut off really quickly, which was a bit of a shock. And then I was invited onto the Double V board, and that started up again, and we kept talking and doing our thing, and the ebbs and the flows of conversation, and it was pretty quiet again. And a little while, sometime last year, things got a bit strange because I noticed Double V, the administrator, was acting a bit different. Things were really censored, if you will. It was just a strange feeling and vibe on the board. So I began to think, this has happened before. If this board goes down or we need another board, where are we going to go? So I was already thinking about putting another board up, but I just had it in the back of my mind. And then things kind of got worse and worse, and there was more censorship and weird things going on. So I started really looking into putting a board up, and I just basically got one ready. That was about April last year. I had it going. and I was the only person there. I didn't advertise it or anything because I didn't want to step on Double V's toes. And then the announcement happened around late June, about almost a year ago, that Vinnie lost a court case and the Double V board closed down. And so I immediately started telling people, hey, I've got this board here. Let's go here and talk about what happened. And so it's been almost a year now, and we've gone from strength to strength. It's the busiest board ever. And then, of course, Vinnie's been in the news. Vinnie went to NAMM. The guitars went to NAMM. So there's been more action in the last year than there has been in the last 10, probably.
Let's link things up with how Vinnie is actually involved with, or was at the time that, and we're just going to call the administrator from the board Double V because he asked for his name not be used for fear of obvious lawsuits. So he agreed that we could share his story on this podcast episode. Basically, Double V and I can pretty much confirm. Well, as far as it's alleged, let's just say it's alleged that Vinnie Vincent himself approached Double V at the time and told him that he would like to possibly, I guess, sort of make it an official Vinnie Vincent. Well, he wanted it to be a Vinnie Vincent tribute thing, but he wanted to be in control of the board, basically, with Double V running the board for him. And which we've seen a bit of proof of this, and I think it's safe to assume that it's Vinnie, but I could be wrong. Let me just leave that caveat in there.
I believe it's Vinnie.
Yeah, I do too. And that's just our opinion, so you can take us to court over that, I guess. So basically, the story that I received that we've heard from Double V was Vinnie was the one behind a lot of the censorship, and that's why the board was kind of free and easy initially. It was very pro Vinnie at the time, but then it increasingly, as you said, got worse and worse with censorship, and people were starting to wonder what is going on here. And I talked to Double V around the time that you started up the VV forum, and I talked to him through email, and I was like, well, because I was one of the people that was kicked off, and he was starting to kick everybody off, and eventually Double V himself was kicked off. And so essentially his story is that he had a feeling that eventually Vinnie was going to kick him off and take control of the board and turn his back on everyone, and that's, if you believe the story, is what actually took place. So you actually have a case where a celebrity took a fan forum over and got rid of all of his fans. And this happened, as you said, right after he lost the court case with Kiss. And for really, I honestly can't tell the reasons other than it's alleged that Double V had gone lax with his control of the board, and some negative things got posted, and Vinnie didn't like that, and that's why he just took it over, but like not a notice, a where are you, or anything, and we were all gone one day. Would you say it's a safe assumption?
Oh yeah. Finding out it was Vinnie was a huge shock because he was so sensitive. He was running it like a regime, but it wasn't any fun. You couldn't say anything. People were being deleted. So yeah.
And another member of that of the new forum, our forum that we post on now, had mentioned that he had helped. They had a couple of the guys had helped Vinnie set up a YouTube page for his signature guitar, right?
Yes.
And it's funny because a lot of this time, I mean, Double V himself, personally I believe him, but at the same time, there's always been a little bit of thing in the back of my head going, well, maybe he got tricked by an imposter or whatever. But what really tied it together for me that it was Vinnie was this YouTube page, because these guys on the board over a year ago were claiming this is the board we set up for him, and then we had this advertisement for the Vinnie Vincent model guitar, and with all kinds of strange things being brought up on the description page, and like first it was this is the only place where Vinnie Vincent's name can be used, and then when I mentioned that I was initially, as some people know, I was initially going to write a magazine article, and then about Vinnie, and then eventually it turned into a book idea, and then I realized that, well, a book's just not practical. I have a family that I have to feed, and there's just too much money to put into a book about Vinnie Vincent, and I just decided, well, I wanted to start up a podcast about rock music, and that's going to be mostly what it's about. But I decided maybe I can use some of these interviews that I'm put together for the book and do an episode about him. And then when the news came out about the arrest, I was like, well, let's go ahead and just do it. And I put a post up on the VV forum and mentioned that I was going to use some of these interviews from the book project for the podcast. And I think it was within 24 hours, there was a threat basically put up against me on that YouTube page stating that it's been pulled down since the arrest, by the way, so you can't read it now, but it stated something along the lines of, it has come to our attention that certain named individuals are planning an internet broadcast of Vinnie Vincent, and basically tried to scare me into not doing it, saying, if you do this, plan for many extensive years of litigation, and you make no mistake, you will be sued. That's the line that made me laugh. And I probably will after this, but I kind of figure it's okay to go ahead and do the episode since the media has already broken the whole story on him. He kind of put himself out there with his arrest, but so people want to know the story, and there's a lot of good stuff. But anyway, there was that thread on the YouTube page, and people kept saying that's Vinnie that's threatening you, and but I still like some confirmation that this is actually Vinnie Vincent doing it. And then the arrest happens, and then the threat gets taken down, and then all of a sudden a statement from Vinnie Vincent pops up on this same YouTube page. Well, that pretty much nailed it for me that I've been threatened by the man himself. And so that's where we're at today. The VV forums, we've built a pretty good community there, but, and a lot of stuff has come up on there. And I mentioned him doing that thread over the forum language that I put up there. And Vic, you can tell us a little bit about how it's funny because sometimes things will go up on that forum, and then all of a sudden you would see the result of him reading our stuff on that forum go up on his YouTube page, correct?
Oh yeah, there's direct reactions. But that also happened when the forum first happened and Double V was still open, so to speak. If you remember, he'd post things that we were saying on our forum virtually on his announcement page. It was quite funny.
Yeah, he was. It was almost like we were communicating we were all cryptically communicating back and forth with him, and it's been a strange thing. And I got to ask you, you haven't mentioned anything on the forum. Have you received any threats directly from him since the board went up?
No, I haven't. I have emailed the address once, but I have not received anything back or heard anything from any Vinnie Vincent representatives or the man himself.
And that's what I find interesting because, it's pretty clear, if you believe what's alleged, that he does read that board and there's images of him all over it. And it's just kind of surprising that he would go and threaten me about this podcast when, there's images of him all over this message board, and our art made out of pictures of him. Not that I want him to sue you or anybody, but it's kind of surprising that he hasn't. But at the same time, and I part of me thinks that maybe he misunderstood what the podcast was going to be, and maybe he thinks that I was planning on playing his music on these episodes that I'm doing on him. And if he's listening now, I'm not going to play any of your music on here because I know how rich record companies are, and I sure don't want their lawyers after me. So but yeah. So Vic, what can you say? What's your reaction over the arrest, and how do you feel about how this story has come to this point?
The arrest was crazy. I was literally with another forum member over the weekend, so I was visiting out of town, and could not believe that I'd wake up some Monday morning here to find out that A, Vinnie was arrested, and B, there was an imminent mugshot coming of him from this arrest. So we were finally going to get to see him in 2011. So yeah, his statement since has been very self-serving. So we'll leave it to the courts to decide what actually happened and who's telling the truth. That'll happen very shortly, and I look forward to finding out what went on and getting the reports from you guys over there.
All right, we're back. Well, that was a good interview. And speaking of good interviews, so far, one of my favorites in the few shows that I've done so far has been with Mitch Lafon of bravewords.com, and become really good, pretty friendly with Mitch over the past few months, as we both have a lot of similar interest musically, especially Kiss, and so I knew I had to get his take on Vinnie Vincent. And Mitch is definitely not the biggest Vinnie Vincent fan, as you're about to hear, but Mitch has I value his opinion, even if I agree or disagree, I respect it, and I think his input is valuable. So here's just a little bit of my chat with Mitch about Vinnie Vincent.
Well, let's go back to, my feeling of him in Kiss. When I found out Vinnie Vincent was in Kiss, it was basically the night of a show in Montreal. In the newspaper, it said, Ace Frehley won't be here tonight. New guitarist fills in. And you can imagine my disappointment. So I guess I had that resentment ever since. And, 8 or 9 months later, Kiss didn't have makeup anymore. So you have this kid in Montreal who grew up 8, 9, 10 years old. Your spaceman disappears, the ink comes in, and then the makeup comes off. So it was like the whole world of Kiss collapsed for me. So I never liked him. And I also didn't like him live because it didn't sound like Kiss anymore. It sort of sounded like, Yngwie Malmsteen playing all over Kiss songs. And it just didn't sound right. It was wrong. Over the last few years, the reunion tour and all that, I sort of kept up on Vinnie's lawsuits with Kiss, and I even had a printout of one of his suits in Los Angeles County Court or Los Angeles Court, and it was just some of the most asinine, frivolous stuff I've ever seen, and it was basically, Vinnie saying, I made Kiss. Without me, Kiss wouldn't exist. And it's like, okay. And, everybody I've spoken to who's had contact with Vinnie, guys in Kiss, promoters at Kiss tribute shows out in Sweden and other places, the guys in Slaughter, nobody likes him. Everybody says he's a nut. The fact that he vanished from the face of the earth after he had promised a Vinnie Vincent box set and a Vinnie Vincent this, and there was just a lot of him having these CDs and products for sale that never got sold, but he kept the money. So when I hear that he's accused of knocking down his wife and the police is called and he's in court very soon, you go, yeah, I was expecting this day.
You guys reported on Vinnie's things going on with the incident and then with his statement.
Right.
So you saw in his statement that he basically said that all of the media people are lying to everybody with the reports. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it goes exactly with what I've heard about him personally, that he's extremely paranoid, and like I just said before with the lawsuits that I had seen from 96, 97 and those years, it's everybody against him. It's Vinnie against the world. And so his statements were classic Vinnie. Classic Kiss is Deuce and Rock and Roll All Night. Classic Vinnie is everybody's out to get me.
Rubbing our last two brain cells together. This is a Decibel Geek podcast.
After a few years of inactivity, Vinnie Vincent reemerged in the mid-1990s as a guest at several Kiss Expos in the U.S. and later across Europe. During this time, he was promoting the aforementioned Euphoria EP as a teaser to the upcoming Guitarmageddon album. Immediately following this European series of expos, a press release came out from the organizer, Gerhard Wimmer, I'm not good with my German pronunciation. He was the organizer and the current head of the website www.kissnews.net. The press release reads like a complete nightmare for Gerhard, and if it's true, it makes Vinnie look pretty bad. There will be a link on the Decibel Geek website with the entirety of Gerhard's press release from 1997 if you'd like to read it. One of the people helping Gerhard at the time was Alex Eckert, who is also better known as Alex Michael of the group Shameless, who also has some Kiss ties due to his relationship with Eric Singer and with Shameless. Alex helped organize and work these European expos in the 90s, and he had a front row seat to all of the drama with Vinnie. Here's a bit of my conversation with Alex and about what he remembers from that time, as well as what he thinks about Vinnie's current trouble. For those that may not know the story, in summary, basically, you guys brought him over for these Kiss expos to do appearances, and the demands got worse and worse as it went on, and basically he basically used Gerhard Wimmer's credit card information and ran up huge bills over the whole course of the trip, and was total, from what I've read, basically was very unapologetic about all of it. How did Vinnie come into your life?
Well, in the beginning, I was just like a Kiss fan, and then when I was like, I think it was like 15, and there was this fan magazine, it was called Kiss Force or something, and there was Vinnie's address in there, so, and then I wrote him a letter, it's like, typical, like, stupid, Kiss fan, when you're a kid, and then, like, he actually responded, so I was kind of, like, impressed back then, that, like, wow, somebody actually did read your letter, and wrote back to you. And then that was basically it, and then I was following, of course, like, like the invasion and that stuff. And then I met him the first time, it was April of 95. Because we were already in the plans of like doing a tour with Ace in the summer of 95, but Vinnie was the special guest at the New Jersey Hackensack Kiss convention, the one that was ran by Richie Reno, the guy from Stars. So that was the first time I met him, and we talked about like, and then my friend from Austria, Gerhard, was like, so how was he like? And I was like, he was actually cool, like, didn't seem like a dick or whatever. And then Gerhard was like, okay, let's do a tour with him. And I was like, okay, sounds like a good idea, Mm-hmm. And then I somehow, like, after that convention, I stayed in contact with Vinnie because, like, he was like, yeah, I might need some help if I do shows or something, whatever, in Europe, and he asked me for my phone number because this was, like, before email, So, and then he was calling me a few times and saying like, look, I have this idea about that 4-song EP, or yes, it was 4 songs. And then he wasn't sure about prices and stuff and asked me tons of questions like, is it better to get the discs manufactured in Europe, but like how could he keep track of it and this and that. And he, the more we talked, the more weird started his ideas to be, because I remember one time he called me, like I said, like, Alexx, I have this great idea. What do you think if I sign the CDs already before and then charge $50 a piece? So like, because at that point we still had the Deutschmark here. Uh-huh. So that would have been like, I don't even know, like 80 D-marks or something, while a regular CD was like 10 songs was like 20 D-marks, So I said like, look, this is out of control, like whoever, might be interested in buying the CD, but like a lot of them will simply not buy it because of the price, because nobody wants to spend like that kind of money on this. And then he was like, yeah, but people pay so much money for the history book. I said like, well, that's a huge book, and you're offering a CD. And then he was telling me those stories about like, yeah, that he wrote some new songs and stuff. But then like when I heard that CD actually, to me, and I still say that, like, it didn't sound like it was new stuff. It sounded like it was like some old demos, or like leftovers from that first Vinnie record. During the conventions, after the bands did sound check, or like a few times before the bands even did the sound check, he went on there and did like a sound check for the CD. He was like fooling around with all the levels and this and that. And then the guy from the sound board was like, wait a second, the band still has to do sound check. And I was like, yeah, but it's more important, that people hear my new songs in the perfect quality, you know, and he did stuff like that. And then, like, I think after the second convention, he was like, okay, from now on, I don't want the Kiss music to be played there. Just play my CD all day long. You know, and of course, like, everybody who was on the tour was going nuts. You know, because can you imagine, like, 4 songs being played for like 10 hours?
Wow.
You know, that's like almost like, yeah.
Well, and who has the gall to demand that Kiss music not be played at a Kiss convention?
Yeah, exactly. And I was like so, but the whole thing was just like so retarded with him. And it's like from every show to the next one, he was getting more and more crazy and paranoid.
Mm-hmm.
Like the best example was like, I think it was like the second show. It was like Gothenburg or something. I don't really remember the place anymore. But the thing was, during that the Q&A session, which was held by Phil Elliott, you know, the guy from Creatures of the South who did like tons of Kiss conventions back in the 90s.
Yes, yeah.
So he did the questions, and then like all of a sudden, you know, like this fan starts asking, Vinnie, when you gonna get your sex change? When you gonna cut your dick off? You know, and then like Vinnie, you know, his eyes almost popped out of his head, you know, when he heard those questions, and then he was getting so freaky, you know, because then later at the further conventions he started having all those requests about like, you know, I need at least like 6 or 8 weaponed professional bodyguards, because what happens if I go into a gas station and the guy who works there is an Ace fan and hates me? He will shoot me. I was like, you know, Vinnie, no offense, but like when you go into a gas station in fucking like Holland, nobody has any idea who you are. They just think it's a guy with a bad wig, you know.
Wow.
And so he was getting like totally crazy, and also for whatever reason he didn't want to play any lead guitar.
Yeah, I've seen the videos from those shows, and I still can't figure out why he wouldn't want to play lead.
Well, here's the story. He said like he had this he did hurt himself on his finger.
Uh-huh.
And he had this like little fake bandit on one of his fingers, and said that is the reason why he couldn't play any leads. And I was like, you know, fuck, like you don't even hold your pick with that finger, you know. Like if it would have been on the left hand, I would have said okay, I can understand it. But first of all, like a lot of times during the daytime, he didn't have that bandit on, and it just was back on, like, you know, when he was at the conventions. I don't know whatever he's, you know, what his problem was. Maybe he hasn't even played in a couple of years or something, you know.
That's all I can think of, is maybe he was rusty and didn't rehearse before going overseas.
Yeah, and especially like those really hard to learn guitar solos, like I Love It Loud or Lick It Up. I mean, that's like, my daughter is 10, and like she probably can learn that in a week or something. But whatever reasons he had, you know, it was like really strange, you know.
Yeah, it sounds like Gerhard took quite a bath on all the credit card stuff that I read about.
Oh yeah, it was insane, you know, because like, I mean, like maybe it was because like credit cards were still not that big like in Europe, or like also like Gerhard was in good face, because like when we did those tours with Peter, Chris, and Ace, you know, like those guys were like totally pro. I mean, like, okay, I would lie if I would say like they were always happy to be there with the fans, you know, because like there were a lot of times they were just like annoyed and pissed, you know, because it's like, oh my god, more autographs and this and that. But they saw the money and knew like, hey, fuck, if we fuck this up, you know, we will not get paid, you know, and the fans will not buy our stuff. But Vinnie, on the other hand, you know, nothing was good enough for him. Like the hotels that we stayed in, you know, and everything, like even the van.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was not a van; it was like a huge, like a traveling bus, you know, like a 40-something seater.
Yeah.
But I think the main reason that he didn't want to go on this bus ride was like, this was like after the first ride, we drove. What was the second one? I'm not 100% sure because I forgot the cities, you know, how we started. But I remember like it was the first ride, and Vinnie did fall asleep, and when he woke up, like his wig was not the way on his head like it's supposed to be. And then his wife was like, you know, well, we couldn't understand what she said, but it was probably like, hey, Vinny, like your wig is like hitting the wrong direction or something. So, and then he went to the bus bathroom and disappeared there for, I think, for like half an hour or something.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, he didn't want to go on the bus ride anymore. Yeah, I remember like the last show, or the last time we saw him was in Hamburg. And that day, he didn't pick up the phone or anything. But he got this huge bill. I think it was like almost like $2,000 or something for like the weirdest stuff, like really, like he had some stuff like shipped back to the States, and whatever food and this and that, and like it was like out of control. But like the thing happened before, like one of the first days, when Gary was like, he got this bill and was like, I never had this, and then he looked at the card. And then it was Vinny, but like Vinny was still not as crazy as he was later on, signing with Gerhard's name on the card,
Wow, my gosh. And I'm trying to get this clear. I think somebody mentioned, was it you that you were going to buy a guitar from him at some point?
Yeah, because I always collected like guitars and like stuff that was Kiss related. So. And Vinny told me about this guitar that he still had from the Lick It Up tour, like one of those Flying V Jackson guitars. Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, it's the one that he used on the tour. That first it was painted gold, but then like through the lightning and stuff on stage, it looked green a lot of time. That's why he had it like redone in pink for the Lick It Up tour. But it was still the same guitar. And he said like, he still has that. And he wanted to sell it for like, I think it was like $2,000 or something. In good faith, because like I did already like a few other things with Vinny, where I bought stuff from him like to sell it on the previous tour, the one in '95 with Ace, So, I gave him like some of the money already, and he said like, okay, he brings the guitar with him on the tour, and then play, so you can still use it there, and then I can have it at the end. And I was like, that's fine with me. But first of all, the thing was, when I saw the guitar, then I noticed that, wait a second, that's not an 83. That's like some whatever later model, and it's also not a custom Jackson guitar. It was like some, one guitar that you could basically buy everywhere. It was like nothing.
It was a mass-produced version.
Exactly, and a cheap one too, So, and when I tried to confront him about that, like, he was like almost not available anymore, and it was like a total weird guy,
Uh-huh.
And so it was like, well, learning experience for me, but like it was really strange, like the whole thing about Vinny was like like crazy,
Did you already handed over the money for the guitar?
No, just a part of it.
And did you end up taking the guitar or no?
No, because like when he disappeared, then and didn't pick up well, actually it was different, because it was like we tried to get a hold of him at the hotel and said like, look, Vinny, you have to get out there because we have to make it to this other show in Hanau, Germany. But he didn't pick up the phone, so we left a couple of messages. But it got to the point where we had to leave, at least for us to make it to the show. And then we just left him there, in the hotel. So it means like Gerhard called the hotel and said, look, that's not me who's signing. I'm in Vienna, Mm-hmm. So whoever signs something with their credit card, that's a fraud, So yeah, I never got the money back. So never did Gerhard,
Wow.
But at that point it was still, it's still like a pain, to do any kind of like lawsuits between Europe and the States. Mm-hmm. Like if you have a lawyer that does that, they charge you like $500 an hour.
Yeah.
So it's not worth it. I was like, okay, fuck it. It's like, what can you do?
So did he end up going back to the States with that guitar?
Yeah, he did.
Okay. Now, do you know that from what my research has shown, that guitar wound up in a Hard Rock Cafe in Cardiff?
Really?
Yeah, and because there's some friends of mine post on this message board that was set up for fans of his, and one of them lives in England, and he took pictures of it, and they've all been sort of how do you say, they've been sort of deconstructing the pictures of it, and they have the same opinion that you do, because he sold it to the Hard Rock Cafe, and it says on the plate, played on the Lick It Up tour. So, and they all have the same opinion you do, that he was full of it, and it's not at all what he says it is.
Yeah.
So I'll send you the link to the photos if you want to check it out.
Yeah, that will be very interesting. No, but I mean, like the whole thing, it's like, it's like really strange, it's like, but like, I was talking with somebody else the other day, and it was weird, because it seemed like both of those guys, like Mark and Vinnie, had some, weird way of, like the way they are, so it's like, I can understand why the relationships with Kiss didn't work out. I mean, like, I'm not saying, like Gene and Paul always do or did everything perfect, but like at least they have for whatever they did, they had a professional reason, so that's kind of like excusable,
Yeah.
But like with Vinnie, it's just like, okay, I have this out of control way of behaving, and then when I read this, like every time you read something about him, it's like, well, now with his wife or whatever she is, and then with the dogs and all those rumors and stories about like him with the sex change, and I mean that's like, stuff like that. I don't think it comes out of nothing, like you never hear stories that, like, let's say like who comes to my mind, like let's say like David Coverdale wanted to have a sex change, or somebody like that,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, or that Gene Simmons wanted to have one, or like
Yeah.
Stevie Rochelle, one of the, nobody, talks about, so it's like I said, those things always come up for a reason. I read some stuff on the internet, like that he was like a drug addict and stuff. Like, I don't believe that at all. Because like those like 3 weeks or something, that we traveled together, like he was always like so about what he was eating, drinking, just like iced tea and stuff. So like that is the one thing, because I don't think it's a good idea, like just to post anything to make somebody look bad. I mean, like, well, the truth about Vinnie is already bad enough, so I don't think anyone has to make up any stuff. So I don't believe any of the drug stories or whatever it was about him,
What do you got to plug? You got any new recordings and new tour dates coming?
Oh yeah, we're gonna record new stuff in in October, and then we're gonna go on tour again all over Europe in the next spring. So we're gonna be in Los Angeles like in October for a couple of weeks, recording some new songs, and and then put out an EP for Christmas, but not a Christmas record like Twisted Sister. I think like they did a great job, but like nobody else should touch that, because then afterwards it's just ridiculous.
Right. Exactly. Well, good. Well, if you guys ever want to come to Nashville, let me know. I know people that could book you.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Proving to the world that Nashville is about more than banjo picking and sister banging. This is the Decibel Geek Podcast.
All right. Well, despite Vinnie's reclusiveness through really most of the past 15 years, we almost got a glimmer of an appearance from him, it seemed, back around 2006, when a press release came up about Vinnie Vincent invading Ed Roman's guitar shop in Las Vegas. Ed Roman is basically known as the luthier to the stars. He's built guitars for many, many famous people, and he's got a huge guitar store in Vegas. And looks like he had a deal in place with Vinnie Vincent to put out a signature guitar for Vinnie in 2006. And the press release basically says Vinnie Vincent will tentatively be appearing informally to shred the walls down. He'll be jamming and previewing some new tracks and promoting the new Ed Roman Vinnie Vincent guitar. Dates are tentative. Please don't call till we set a date. Well, of course, they never got to set a date because, as Ed Roman himself told me, Vinnie basically was just a few days away from going to Vegas to do this thing, and called him up and demanded double what he was supposed to take from the guitar. And Ed just didn't want to work with him after that, which is, understandable. So, yeah, it's he wound up putting out a model that's similar to the Vinnie Vincent guitar. It's got the Ed Roman headstock on it, but I think he said he can build it to spec if you want that kind of guitar still. So if you want to get in touch with him, he's at edromanguitars.com. But yeah, here's just a little quick snippet of me and Ed's talk from this past year.
The last minute, Vinnie tried to fucking jack me for more money, and his lawyer actually quit working for him when he did that. So I dealt with his lawyer, everything was cool, and everything was fine, everything was set up. And then at the last minute, fucking phone call, I get a phone call, and Vinnie goes, I've been thinking about this, and I think I need more money for this. He says, I want $500 for a guitar.
What was the original bargain?
$250.
So he wanted to double what he was going to take from him.
Right. So then my words to him were, Vinnie, you're your own worst enemy.
All right, folks. Well, a lot of this show was pretty well scripted. I don't know about well scripted, but I had written out a lot of my talking points well in advance for this show, and I hope it didn't come off way too over rehearsed or under rehearsed or whatever. But with all these new developments, I'm just going to go ahead and give my final thoughts here on this, just like Jerry Springer. The whole situation is really sad for me. I grew up a Kiss fan, as everyone that listens to this show knows, and I really liked Vinnie's era of Kiss. And as I mentioned in part one, I really got into his solo stuff and even a lot of the unreleased stuff that you can find on YouTube when I started researching Vinnie's career for initially the writing project and now this podcast episode. And I got into the music quite a bit during this, and it's funny because I was getting such a high off of, getting into this new music and this crazy over-the-top guitar playing, and it's like discovering something new, and felt like being that kid that was a Kiss fan again, getting into it all over again. But then at the same time, the more I researched, the worse things seemed to get, and I'd get a glimmer of hope. I'd talk to some people that were positive, but then I heard there was a number of people that even had worse things to say than what has appeared on this episode. And there are two reasons those didn't come out on here. Well, one, I'm just not one to completely slag the guy and put the worst of the worst rumor and innuendo that I heard out, because I'll put out stuff that I hear, but I'm not going to go into the gutter for it. And so some of the stuff I did by choice just not include, because I'm trying to be respectful, although I don't know that he deserves it with everything he's done. He hasn't really done anything specific to me other than the threat that was pretty clearly made at me through the YouTube channel about my podcast. And if he follows up on that, then so be it. But it's just sad because I'm getting so into the music, and at the same time, I'm hearing all these negative things. The other reason I didn't put out some of the stuff is I had some people that told me some really horrible things that this guy has done and about him, and I don't know that they're true or not, but they weren't willing to go on the record. And if you're not willing to go on the record for this, then I'm not going to bother including it. So this is pretty much the tip of the iceberg with everything that I found. And honestly, I'm tired. I am drained and depressed from researching Vinnie Vincent, to be honest with you. And it's just a sad situation all around, because I think the guy has a massive amount of talent. And to this day, I think he could put out material if he wanted to, and probably do pretty well with it. He's not gonna do huge numbers, but I think he would still have a fan base there that would buy the stuff. But it's just sad to me that he will not come out and on his own and just address things that have come up in the past and just put all of the rumors to rest. Or if he did something wrong and he felt bad about it, then come out and just take responsibility. But that's just my opinion. He can do whatever he wants. He's Vinnie Vincent and I'm not. I'm just a nobody with a podcast, and I understand that. And he's the guy who was the legendary guy in Kiss, and maybe he likes all the mystery around what's going on in his head. I don't know, but I know that the behavior on his message board and how he acts on there, I find it sad. And it's just there's so much more important music and stuff he could share with the world than acting like this over a message board. And if I could say one thing to him, if he's listening to this, is Vinnie, you are never going to have people stop saying bad things about you, especially with the advent of the internet and media. And I'm sorry, but stories come out, and stories are never going to be resolved unless you decide to address them yourself. And as long as you remain silent on this stuff and never address it and put the speculation and rumors to rest, even your biggest fans, I'm not maybe your biggest, but I am a fan, are going to question things. And you can't blame people for questioning things. And it's sad that you don't allow anything to question you on your own message board. It's just, I mean, even Mother Teresa has had shit talked about her on the internet. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying it's reality. So, in closing, Vinnie, if you're listening to this, I hope you do eventually put out music. I hope you turn your life around and things do go well for you. But until you address rumors, that they're going to remain that rumors until you actually squash them. And to all those that sat through this humongous amount of time to listen to these 2 episodes, if you're still a fan of his, that's great. I will always be a fan of the music and the guitar playing, and especially the songwriting. Great songwriter. But I hope this sheds light on him. But it's always best to remember the good things, and the guy does have great music. Couldn't play it on this show because I'm trying to stay out of the court system. I may still wind up in it. I don't know. But I hope he understands that this was done in a matter of respect from a fan. And as I said before, Vinnie Vincent is always welcome to come on here, and if he wants to set the record straight and dispute anything that was brought up on this show, and it's totally his choice. If not, no big deal. I've got plenty more episodes to keep me busy with other artists and different kinds of bands and all that stuff. So until next time, I hope you Vinnie fans enjoying this, and get in touch with me through the show, DB Geek Show. Look it up on Twitter. Look me up on Google. You should be able to find me pretty easily. We also have a Facebook page, so check us out there. Until then, until next time, this is Chris Czynszak signing off.